You know, being a producer in the field, filming outdoor television, we're always on the road. This week I'm in Kentucky filming a fall turkey hunt with my good friend Scott Cronin, and I get a phone call from John, and he goes, Jason, he goes, we've got some major bad weather coming. Can you get to Illinois as quick as you can? Well, I think I was 2 hours away, and so you don't have to ask me that twice. You know, I'm loaded for bear. I've got everything I need for whitetail hunting in my truck. I'm going to Illinois.
My friend Jason Miller is not only one of the best producers in outdoor television and video, and has been for probably 25 years now, but he's also a very good hunter. Something that I've learned working with Jason over the last 3-4 years or so. You know, having him in the hot seat, so to speak, and having him with the bow in his hand and me being behind the camera is just a very neat experience for me.
This season, Save the Habitat, Save the Hunt is brought to you by Mossy Oak, the official camo of the NWTF. Benelli, performance worth the price. Bass Pro, your adventure starts here. Browning, the best there is. Savage, the best idea in firearms since the Second Amendment. Mossberg, American built, American strong. Sig Sauer, world renowned. And by Weatherby, inspiring the dreams of hunters and shooters since 1945. What does it take to make a difference? It takes NWTF volunteers. It takes partners. It takes passion. The National Wild Turkey Federation remains strong because of you. Our challenge remains: save the habitat, save the hunt. To recruit, retain, and reactivate hunters, it takes mentors, landowners, and partners. Help us build a winning team. It's your NWTF, your mission, our future. What will you do in the future to make a difference?
Well, here it is, the first afternoon that we're actually sitting. We're not probably 150 yards from the stand where we originally had the encounter with a buck now we're calling Kong. As we're sitting there in the afternoon and we're watching a buck across the field, I was absolutely enamored with this buck. He was wide, heavy, he's got mass, he's got deep fork split G2s, and we're calling him Mighty Joe Young. Just a beautiful buck. He's across the field working does, and he's got a slight limp to him. So that's telling me that somewhere along the line, another buck's gotten a hold of him. Well, as we're sitting there watching this buck, and I'm just sitting there praying, please let this buck come this way. He's got to come 300-400 yards to get to us. Well, out steps to the left, there's Kong. And let me tell you, when you see this buck and he steps out, there's no doubt about why his name is Kong. So this buck steps out when I range him. He's right there, I believe it was 69 yards. And of course, I'm not going to take a shot at a buck of that caliber that far. I tried to grunt to him, but he just wouldn't listen to me. You know why? Right across the field, he's looking at Mighty Joe, and he is on a beeline to go see him.
Closed captioning provided by Bushnell Trail Cameras.
So this buck steps out when I range him. He's right there, I believe it was 69 yards. And of course, I'm not going to take a shot at a buck of that caliber that far. I tried to grunt to him, but he just wouldn't listen to me. You know why? Right across the field, he's looking at Mighty Joe, and he is on a beeline to go see him. Now here's what's interesting is that in the field, there's all sorts of does. But Kong has got his eyes locked on Mighty Joe Young, and here he goes. I mean, he's stiff-legged. He's walking to him. He's getting right there in his red zone. And what do? You see them posturing up, and both John and I are like, they're about to lock up. Well, right at that last moment, when you see Kong turn to the side and he's about to lay into him, Mighty Joe turns around and starts to walk off. Well, that tells me that Kong has definitely put him in his shoes before. And so here we're looking at a 160 class buck and a 170 class buck, all in the same field that we're in, and it can't get any better than this. So one thing I noticed is that once Kong went over and showed his dominance to Mighty Joe Young, and he's probably the one that probably gave him a little bit of a scolding to make him have that limp that he's got now. Kong went into the thicket, and then out comes Mighty Joe Young again. And this time, one thing that I've noticed is that instead of staying in his little home range over there in that little corner with all the does, what does he do? He gets out and he starts walking across that field, and then he breaks that invisible force field where he would, when he'd reach it, he'd go back to the wood line. Now he's walking away, and he's walking out of sight to our left. It's the rut. We're in Illinois, and I just saw two monster bucks, and one is now leaving the home range. So we're still hopeful that Kong's going to come out, or Mighty Joe Young's going to circle back around. He's just outside of that call range. No matter what I do to throw at him, he's just not going to hear it. Well, one thing he started doing, he finally started coming out and started checking these does. Well, he'd get closer and closer and closer, and finally I got to throw a grunt out to him, threw a couple of bleak cans at him, and sure enough, he heard it, and here he comes. Now, one thing I can tell you, we're hunting this ridge line. It's like an L on top of this hillside. We've got a wood line behind us, and it goes down to a thicket of Phragmites. Well, it's very deceiving until I pick up my rangefinder, and I'm sitting there checking my spots to make sure I know exactly what my ranges are. Well, as this buck's coming in, he's coming on a string and he's looking right at us. I'm on the front of the tree, John's behind running the camera, and you know, he starts coming to us, and all of a sudden, what does he do? He's going right downwind, and sure enough, what does he do? He catches our wind. Here he comes. So here we are, we're going on 2 encounters with Kong in the same field, same spot, same area. And so not only that, now we've got Mighty Joe Young, 2 mature bucks that you never get to see together in the same area. So now we just, even though we didn't get a shot today, now it's just a matter of time, playing the wind and getting back into the stand. You know, when it comes to hunting big bucks, you hardly ever get those encounters with a true giant buck. And Kong is that kind of buck. Just a huge, typical 10-pointer. It's those bucks you dream about when you're in a tree stand. You know, and during the rut, they can go anywhere. And so, you know, sometimes they go into another area where another hunter's hunting and you're not there. And, you know, you see a buck like that, that buck deserves every bit of the honor and respect that any deer deserves and more, because that buck has reached maturity. And, you know, you get a hunter that delivers an ethical shot to him, even though it wasn't your tag you're putting on him. You know, that's still awesome to me, because you can see the look in their face and how much that buck means to them. And you can actually put yourself in their shoes on how they felt when they were in the stand. And that buck, where I saw him at 69 yards, John saw him at 53 or 4 yards, and now that hunter saw him in bow range. And I'm getting chills now thinking about it. And so my hat's off to John for making a great shot and being able to take home a buck of that caliber. You just don't get to see that very often at all. We know we've got waterfowl season right on us. We've got Christmas coming, and you know, one thing I've got in my pocket right now is an Illinois whitetail tag. So season's not over yet. Another couple of weeks, I'll be back. This week I'm in Kentucky filming a fall turkey hunt with my good friend Scott Cronin, and I get a phone call from John, and he goes, Jason, he goes, we've got some major bad weather coming. Can you get to Illinois as quick as you can? Well, I think I was 2 hours away, and so you don't have to ask me that twice. You know, I'm loaded for bear. I've got everything I need for whitetail hunting in my truck. I'm going to Illinois. So as I'm getting into camp, John mentions that he wants to go out into the field and move some stands. Well, one thing I can tell you about John Brown is that he pays attention to the wind, to the T. And that means that, you know, if the wind's wrong on one stand site that we have, we need to go in there, break that down, and go move it to a new area just to make sure that the wind is perfect for that spot that we're hunting. If we got into the field and moving stands for us is labor intensive because we have twice the amount of equipment that a normal hunter has. We've got 2 stands we have to put up, and then we have to put up the camera base and the tree arm, and it typically takes us a while to get all that set up. And so as we're getting into the field, I'm hearing barking, and you know, I'm used to hearing hunting dogs and farm dogs run around barking, but one thing I noticed about these dogs is that they're pretty much staying in one spot. They're not moving much at all. Well, that tells me that they've got something on the ground or treed in that area.
We drive up into the corner of this large field, and as soon as we get out of the truck, we hear dogs barking. And Jason immediately, you know, 10 seconds of that, he says, they're not moving. We get down and we start walking that way, and there's a small pond in this particular piece of timber. And as we're getting close to it, the first thing I see is a dog on the other side of the pond. And I hear Jason say, please don't let that be Mighty Joe Young. Please don't let that be Mighty Joe Young. I don't even know what he's talking about.
Dude, that's Mighty Joe. Are you kidding me?
We don't have any real camera gear with us. Jason had a little small camera with him, and I said, okay. I said, I'll run back to the camp. I'll get the big camera. I'll bring your bow, and we'll, you know, if we need to put him out of his misery, we'll do that. And so I take off, come back to the camp, and about halfway back, and my phone rings, and I said, yeah, it's Jason calling. And I said, yeah, and he said, he's dead. Jason he's really wants to see what killed this deer. And he wants to see so badly that he's ready to go in the pond and get the deer.
It was probably in between 32 and 35 degrees out, and as I got into the water was actually colder than it was outside. So obviously it was instant hypothermic situation as I started going out, and then eventually I got into my chin and couldn't feel the bottom anymore. And I noticed as I was paddling out to him that I became severely exhausted, and as I finally reached him, there came a point to where I had to lay back because I didn't think I was gonna make it out. He got to the point where I couldn't feel my legs, and it got to the point where I thought that I was gonna slip under. And so one thing I can tell you is that the thought going through my mind is that how upset my wife was going to be with me that I took a chance like that to go after a buck that I truly loved. You know, I couldn't leave him in the water. If you ever get into that kind of situation where you're thinking about going into the water after any animal, look at other options and let that be your absolute last option, because as I was laying there on my back in the water trying to get back to shore, where I was just trying to relax and breathe and compose myself, that I realized at that moment it's not worth it. Sometimes you got to use your head before you make a decision like that, because it could affect not only you but your whole family. So I'm very thankful right now that I made it out.